Today on With the First Pick, we're rolling out our pre-draft tight end rankings. Sometimes you hear media and fans talk about a weak draft class because it lacks quarterback depth. And while this class only has 2 first-round QBs in my mind, it is incredibly deep at defensive line, edge rush, running back, and tight end. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Emory Hunt. This is episode 243. Emory, keep a score at home. We got 35 days to the 2025 NFL Draft. How you doing?
Doing fine, man. It's feel like it is barreling toward the draft. Once you get past the Senior Bowl and then the combine kind of weeds in there, next thing you know, we're talking about what we're doing for draft content in days 1 and 2 and 3.
It's like middle school where once you get past Christmas break, then you get Easter, then you get spring break. The next thing you know, it's June. Got shorts on. Time to go to the pool. By the way, in case you missed it, Emory and I talked about running back rankings earlier this week, and me and Josh Edwards hit the wide receiver rankings as well. And we were so busy, you can even check out me and Brian McFadden, BMAC, doing a mock draft. All those shows are in the old podcast feed. All right, Emory, let's get to the tight ends. And this group is stacked. A lot of fun to talk about. Last year, the only first-round tight end, Brock Bowers. Here are our individual rankings. You can see these on the old YouTube machine if you're listening. I'll hit the highlights here. I have Colston Loveland just a hair above Tyler Warren. Emory's is slop there, and I'm not going to push back either way. Tyler Warren, outside of maybe Cam Ward and maybe my guy Kyle McCord, no one helped themselves more than Tyler Warren. You could argue Tyler Warren is number 1 on that list. We both have Gunnar Helm 3. Shout out to Gunnar Helm. We both have Mason Taylor, son of Jason Taylor, 4. And then things get a little interesting, but all similar names for the most part. But there's some guys on my list that aren't on Emory's and vice versa, but all dudes that had really good seasons and deserve to be in part of this conversation. So there are no outliers, nothing that takes your breath away here in terms of shock value. And Emory, before we get to our number 1 here, our 1 and 2, we'll talk about those quickly. We both have Oronde Gadsden the second on here, and it'll be interesting to see how teams view him. And I bring that up because when you do your draft guide, which has over 1,000 people, the most exhaustive draft guide on planet Earth, is he an inline? Is he a move? How do you rank your tight ends when you decide how are you going to stack them?
Now, that's a great question, Ryan, because I have a hard time ever since I started ranking receivers and tight ends and corners and even defensive linemen. We realize that they don't play the same position. Like we can go out there in 13 personnel, 1 back, 3 tight ends, and all 3 tight ends are playing 3 different roles. So I break it down as an inline guy, which is your standard traditional tight end in the sense of the guy that's right next to the tackle. That's a great blocker for the most part. Also very solid receiver, can do all the meets expectations things you want. Then you move out to your flex guy, which is your glorified big wide receiver, a guy that has, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but has no interest in blocking for the most part, but does do a good job stalk blocking defensive backs and is able to position block a little bit. But he's mostly your Jimmy Graham type. You're a fantastic receiver. That's a matchup problem. You flex him out wide and let him go play above the rim all throughout the red zone. And then you have your H-back, which is kind of your I think your most versatile guy because he's a move piece. He can run routes. He's a very good blocker. You probably can put him in a backfield and hand him the football too. And so you can do a lot of different things with an H-back. Think of like a not a Travis Kelce, George Kittle. More so probably one of the better H-backs in the game. You even have someone like a Kyle Juszczyk who was a tight end, a flex tight end at Harvard, transitioned to fullback, and we've seen that work for them, having both of those guys out there on the field in San Francisco. So that's why I have inline, flex, Gadsden would be a flex, and also an H-back.
I'm going to give you a deep cut for one of my favorite H-backs ever. And I'm going to give you the name. You got to tell me where he goes to college, see how good you are.
Okay.
My dude, Chris Cooley.
Oh, come on now. That was Utah State, right?
You got it. That's
I was afraid to throw out a deep cut because I remember he played with the Dolphins in the 80s. Remember Jim Jensen?
Oh, yeah. Did he have did he wear a neck roll in a birdcage?
Yeah, he was number 11.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
He football too. Yep.
Okay. All right. I got that one.
Right?
Jim. Okay. That's old school. Very few people will get that reference. Chris Cooley, man, he was a good player, though. Undersized, but did exactly the things you're talking about. And they that's when Joe Gibbs would just come back to Washington, and they used him in all sorts of ways. And that's sort of to what Emory's talking about here in terms of these 3 silos you got to put these tight ends in. All right, let's get to our list here, the consensus list. And first up, for me, 1A for you, Colston, Loveland. And again, you can mix and match these guys depending on what you're looking for, what scheme you're looking for. We've talked about the Broncos. We talked about the Colts both needing tight ends. And they could go with one or the other, Colston, Loveland, or Tyler Warren, and not be wrong here. Here's why I have Colston, Loveland just a hair ahead of Tyler Warren. Freakish athleticism. You talk about Jimmy Graham. I think he has Jimmy Graham type athleticism. He's not that thick. Mm-hmm. We talked to him at the combine, and he had his arm in a sling. He just had shoulder surgery, I believe. He's going to be fine. He's another kid like Chris Cooley. He's from he's a Wyoming guy. He's an Idaho guy. Chris Cooley's from Wyoming. He's an Idaho guy, so he grew up working on farms, that sort of stuff. But he looks like a long wide receiver out there. If I told you that was Tyrell McMillan, you might believe me. He's one of the best route runners, tight end or otherwise. He's a get-in-the-way blocker guy, but again, that's not where you draft him top 15. And he is consistently stacking guys like he's a fast wide receiver, which I love. And he's running through arm tackles. Now, the concern, Emory, is that the quarterback situation was, shall we call it, suspect in 2024. He and J.J. McCarthy were on the same page consistently in 2023. Not his fault. But that's why I have him just a hair above, and he didn't do any of the drills because of the injury. So we don't know how fast he is in shorts and T-shirt. But if you told me he's a 4.6 guy, I might say he goes faster than that.
He's my number one in line, to be honest.
Okay, there you go.
I'm with you right there in terms of I have no issues with you having him top the list. And here's the thing, too, man. He's so strong both at the catch point within his route and after the catch. So he's breaking tackles. He's physical. You could throw him the football when he's covered. So you really don't have a bad situation when you're throwing the football to him. And I just like the fact that he is someone that is, a really good route runner. So that's going to always yield itself to him being open. And Michigan is like one of those programs that's just sight unseen. Oh, Michigan got a tight end? Sign me up. I don't even have to watch the tape.
Right.
So I'm with you on Loveland.
It's funny because I always forget Luke Schoonmaker's name, the former Michigan tight end who got drafted by the Cowboys in the 4th round. And I was talking to Josh about this during the wide receiver show. And I said, I keep thinking his name is Pendergast. And Josh made the point that every Big Ten tight end, every team has some tight end named Pendergast. So you may not be wrong. Like Pendergast feels like a Big Ten tight end name. But to your point, you can find guys at Michigan that play tight end. They were probably former quarterbacks. And then you get them in the league and they're going to do their thing. All right, I'm looking up some notes on Colston Loveland. Got another pop quiz for you. So Colston's brother's name's Caden. Set several receiving records in high school. Plays wide receiver at Carroll College. Where's Carroll College?
That has to be in Idaho or Iowa. That's an NAIA program.
It's an NAIA program. So I'll give you points for that. People can tell me whether it's Idaho or Iowa.
They're the Saints, aren't they?
Sure. St. Lawrence are the Saints. I just found that out.
Look at you.
Cost me $80,000 to find that one out. All right, before we get to Tyler Warren, Penn State standout from Richmond, Virginia. And just to remind you, Emory, both Debo and Stryker, Penn State alums, went to the dumb state school in Pennsylvania. They got a special message about Tyler Warren that I cannot wait to hear. What we got, Stryker?
Ain't nobody on the field, jump higher. Throw it up, he a real high flyer. Okay, Penn State on fire. Big play by triple threat Tyler. And when he catch it, they see the flow out the back of the helmet. We have Big Mike and Pat Fryer. Up next, that's triple threat Tyler.
All right, Stryker, you got to explain to me what just happened.
That is the Triple Threat Tyler song by Matty Fresh.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's right. So the Trace McSorley TikTok song was a thing.
Oh, yeah.
3-4 years
ago,
right?
That was the highlight of Trace's NFL career.
I didn't know that Tyler had a song.
Man on TikTok.
Okay. All right. That's a little catchier. The Trace McSorley song, as I recall, was not great.
Yeah, they're all great. And Jahan Dotson had one. Super Bowl champ now.
Super Bowl champ with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jahan Dotson. Tyler Warren, that is your future. All right, yeah. So Stryker built up the suspense there. I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed. I thought he was going to have a special message for me and you, Emory, but Tyler Warren's a man of few words. He lets his actions on the field do the talking. Look, man, we talked about him over the summer and summer scouting. I thought he was a late day 2, day 3 guy at the time. He took that message to heart, and he played literally every position at Penn State. He will inline block his ass off. He will run through arm tackles all day long. He will make every contested catch. He's not going to beat Colston Loveland in a foot race, probably. Don't care. I don't know what the downside is to Tyler Warren, and I would take both these guys top 15.
Yeah, there's no downside, man. I said this earlier in the week. Outside of Travis Hunter, Tyler Warren may be I think he's arguably the second best football player in a draft class, like bar none. And when you're getting, and I'm not saying this because he wears 44, but he does give off a lot of Dallas Clark vibes.
That's my comp.
So you think about it, man. This guy can think about how open your playbook is going to be with a Tyler Warren on your football team. You get inside the red zone. He's not only a very good receiver, you can flex him out wide to where he can go be the above the rim guy. And oh, by the way, you can line him up at quarterback and not just run quarterback power, because he actually can throw, because he was a high school quarterback. So not only you have to really be gap sound versus a QB power, your backside corner better be at inside position, because that slant gonna kill him, because he could throw that slant and hit it accurately on the move. So I think he's a fantastic football player. That's why he's my number one. He's actually my number one H-back in terms of how I slot them. But man, just as an overall tight end, give me those guys, especially on game day, that could do more than one thing. But he's just a phenomenal football player, man. I'm a big fan of his game.
Yep, I'm with you 100%. My comp for him was Dallas Clark. Difference is, you can see there in the image, if you're watching, he wears gloves. Dallas didn't wear gloves, right?
Dallas just went out there straight naked head and just was like, I'm going out there just straight, give me the pass and let's go play.
And my comp for Colston Loveland, and I mentioned this to him, and he didn't push back, because our buddy Rick Spielman used to always act like he was going to puke every time I came up with a comp, was Zach Ertz. Like, I got some Zach Ertz vibes from him, just to put that out there.
Like,
but one of the things I wanted to mention about Tyler, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, 6'6", about 235 in high school. They had him playing center in Richmond, suburban Richmond school. And he was such a dog that he would take it to the city schools. Like, that's how good he was going up against bigger, stronger, faster guys. Also want to shout out, those teams were good, but not great, primarily because of Tyler, although he won't say that. But I know his high school coach. I've known him for 30 years. Atlee High School just won the state title. So Richmond's making things happen. Shout out to Coach Rally XL. And this is how good a kid Tyler Warren is. He always leaves tickets for his basketball coach at the Penn State game every week.
He's like Jerry Glanville leaving tickets for Elvis.
Elvis, yeah.
Game.
And the good news for Stryker is, after he pubbed up Tyler, I heard Tyler's going to leave him tickets to the Penn State game.
Don't tell Stryker that, man.
Go see Robot Drew Aller throw interceptions every other week. I'm just kidding. I love Drew Aller. I had to stick it to Debo and Stryker there. All right, so those are 1 and 2. They're one, basically. You can mix and match them, and if those guys get drafted in the top 15, would that be a surprise to you, both of them?
Not at all, because again, you combine need with talent, and I mean, it's a perfect fit for a lot of teams, to be honest.
Here, before we take a break, let's do this real quick. Since 2010, there have been exactly 12 tight ends drafted in the first round. Last year, Brock Bowers, I would imagine, I'm not going to ask, Brock Bowers is probably tight end 1 among all the tight ends drafted in the first round, that is, in the last, since 2010. I'll read out the names. You tell me whether you would take Colston/Tyler or this former first round pick at tight end. So Brock Bowers, I think we're both taking Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I'll take Brock Bowers.
You're not getting crazy on me with that one. All right, next up in 2023 was Dalton Kincaid.
I'll take Warren or Loveland. I'll take both of those over Kincaid.
Kyle Pitts. Knowing what we know about Kyle Pitts now.
Or the prospect Kyle Pitts.
No, Kyle Pitts after we saw the production. All these kids.
Oh, that's cheating. So I would take out after seeing the production, I would take Tyler Warren/Loveland. But pre-draft, I still would take Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, because we fell for it. And that's not Kyle Pitts' fault. Just sometimes we fall in love with the athleticism. TJ Hawkinson.
Warren and Loveland.
Yeah, right? Noah Fant.
You know, I would say Warren and Loveland. I was a fan of Fant, but I like these two dudes better.
But I think sometimes that athleticism, we get caught up in it, and it doesn't necessarily translate. Again, he's a good player. Hayden Hurst, good player, but I'm not even going to ask you on that one.
Yeah, he was.
OJ Howard was the sort of the.
That was the one that got me, because I thought he was supposed to be the future. You know what I'm saying?
Because he could do everything, and he didn't do everything.
Yeah, so probably pre-draft, I would say knowing what we know now, I would have went Howard.
Yeah,
but now I obviously go Warren and Loveland.
Evan Ingram.
Warren
Ran
and
4
Loveland.
threes, I believe.
Yeah, but there was always something unique about him that I didn't really grasp. It was more, it just felt like he was sort of finesse.
Right. I mean, he is the exact guy you're talking about that is not interested in blocking, but will sprint down the field.
Right.
David Njoku, and that was 2017. Man, 2017 had 3 guys go.
Warren and Loveland.
Eric Ebron, 2014.
Warren and Loveland, but I could see I remember myself liking Ebron because of the athleticism.
Absolutely. This one might be a little tougher. Tyler Eifert.
Oh, you know, he was my number. I forgot which I had him slotted in, but man, I was a big fan of Eifert. I was on that Notre Dame tight end kick then.
Yeah.
So I would probably lean more toward Warren and Loveland.
But it's close. And then finally, Jermaine Grisham, who's still playing.
Right. I would say Warren and Loveland. Grisham was solid, man. He's kind of like a guy we're going to talk about later.
He's a throwback. He could do it all.
Yeah.
And he was enormous. Probably 6'7", maybe. Was he that tall?
And still playing. That was part of a very good Oklahoma offense, too.
All right, Striker, let's take a quick break. So those are 1 and 2. We got our TikTok Tyler Warren fix for the morning. And when we come back, we're going to talk about where the 3 through 6 tight ends rank right after this.
One of golf's elite courses, Quail Hollow, hosts the game's top players at the PGA Championship this May on CBS.
All right, Emory, I'm glad that you had this young man number 3 because we talked about this with the running backs. You watch a guy and you're like, okay, why is no one talking about him? And if you watch the Michigan game, he would have been the first player taken. Gunnar Helm, such a good player. Went to the combine with an ankle injury and ran a 4.8. I would have suggested that he didn't run at all, but he plays much faster than that. I'm not worried about the 4.8. I give him credit for being tough and toughing it out. I said he's smooth in space. He runs well. He moves well laterally because sometimes these bigger guys can be a little stiff. He can stress the middle of the field. We saw what he did in that Michigan game. He caught a touchdown on a little skinny post there in the red zone. He can make guys miss, high point catcher, reliable, all the things you look for in a tight end. And for me, he's just a rung below Colston and Warren. And I think if he went on day 2 and relatively early on day 2, I mean, Ben Sinnott was a second-round pick last year. I like Ben Sinnott a lot. He's a better player package-wise at this point in his career than I think Ben Sinnott.
I mean, and the thing is, too, I have the same grade with him and Loveland. So they numerically they tie with the same grade because he's one of those guys that plays faster than whatever he time. And I was saying this at the combine, like, man, where your friends at? Because I would have told him, like, bro, don't go out there after you sprained your ankle and try to run a 40. But you know, high school coaches across the nation, like, if he can run a 4.8 with a sprained ankle, you can run these 15 gassers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
right.
He about to be the example every high school football coach will use as a guy toughened through an injury. So you got to give him credit for that. And he's super good with the ball in his hand. So he's elusive. He's looking to score the ball. I like that about his game. He's actually a very good blocker, but at times his base gets a little too wide. So he loses leverage and balance and then just toss him to the side. But the effort is there. He's consistently good, more so than he's not at blocking. So you can trust him in line. And I like the fact that when he gets the ball in his hands, he's not looking just to go down and secure the first down. He's looking to score.
So he 6'5", came in at 241 at the combine. He looked like he played heavier than that. So I don't know if he was just taking rest from his ankle or what. My comp for him was Sam Laporta in terms of coming out of Iowa. I think it's hard to tell. We just went through the list of first-round picks, former tight ends who, to varying degrees, didn't meet expectations. But, I mean, just based on what we know about him and what he did on Saturdays, it's hard not to like Gunnar Helm. And I would take him in the second round all day long as he's healthy. And he's Quinn Ewers' best friend in the middle of the field, and that's what he's going to be for quarterback / young or old. So don't overthink it.
And there's no downside to doubling up on a position. We've seen teams do that.
Yeah.
New England did it.
New England did it. And now, I mean, Washington last year, they got Zach Ertz. They drafted Ben Sinnott. They have John Bates, the blocking tight end. So, and depending on, Arthur Miller loves tight ends. So, they got 12 guys to play tight end.
Right.
So, it just depends on the scheme. And to your point, when you start mixing and matching how you use these guys in line, in the slot, move, whatever, you can get a couple of them on the field, especially if they're athletic, and then you get the mismatch you want versus the coverage, and then it's go time. Speaking of mismatches, Jason Taylor's son out of LSU, and a little of a projection because the athleticism is there, and you don't want to fall into the Evan Ingram trap and the Noah Fant trap and the David Njoku trap, guys who are Kyle Pitts, who were insanely athletic, but either never met expectations or were misused in the scheme in the NFL or whatever you want to call it. But man, there's some flashes on tape that get you super excited. And it's funny because Garrett Nussmeier, who we talked about a lot last year, he came back to LSU, wore Mason Taylor out. And you remember back during the Joe Burrow era, it was Thad Moss, Randy Moss's son, who I think ended up being an undrafted free agent. Bloodlines clearly, but Mason Taylor is every bit the athlete his dad is, except he plays tight end. And it feels like Emory, he's just scratching the surface. And let me tell you quickly, 6'5", 251, 10-inch hands. My comp for him was, what I say? I said somewhere between Trey McBride and a better blocking Dalton Kincaid, because he will also block, which is something that, as you talked about, is hit or miss with these tight ends in today's college game.
Yeah, he's my third inside inline tight end. And it's funny because in the blocking, the effort is there, but I feel like he still gives up a little bit too much ground to where the defensive lineman is starting to reset the line of scrimmage a little bit. So you want him to show a little bit more oomph in the blocking department. But man, as a receiver, you talk about someone that is looking to score. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's good after the catch. And he was starring from day one. You go back to his freshman year, against Florida State, and he had a really good game there, and just kind of continued to grow and progress, just like Will Campbell did. I compared his game to Mark Andrews because he reminded me a lot of Mark Andrews when he was at Oklahoma.
Yep.
Same type of guy that, unassuming athlete, but can move and, is getting these chunk plays. I do like the fact that he can, play above the rim. He has a great sense of timing. We've seen him catch numerous big time touchdowns in critical moments, Alabama game being one of them, for LSU. So, and here's the thing about his confidence in his hands. We saw it during the gauntlet drill. He just stays straight down the line.
Yep.
That shows you he's confident catching on the move. A lot of guys try to cheat the game and try to, swing back and forth to ensure they catch it. But he just stayed straight down the line, caught the football with ease. And that's the type of guy you're going to get. He's going to be a very good security blanket for some team.
Yeah. I feel like you're overthinking it if you don't think he's a day two guy, just because of the upside and the flashes that we saw. All right. I can't believe we were basically on the same page for the first four picks. Something's
you hacked my computer, so you're seeing my guide. That's what you're doing.
Yeah, your little compact. Remember those compacts?
Yeah, right.
COMPAQ. This next guy,
Comp USA.
Comp USA. That's right, man. This next guy, I was surprised to see him on your list, only because I thought I was high on him. You had him ranked one spot higher than me in our individual rankings, and when we brought him together, he found his way to number 5, Oronde Gadsden the second. Now, realistically, when I talk to teams out of Syracuse, shout out Syracuse, he's a day 3 guy. I would take him in the 3rd round all day long and feel great about it. And I was at his pro day a couple days ago watching him and Kyle McCord and Jackson Meeks, 6'4", 243. And that's about what he played at. I talked to him at the Shrine Bowl, 10-inch hands, and then he ran a 4.65, and he's still 21 years old. 4.65, that ain't slow. In fact, that's plenty fast for a tight end. Hockenson ran the 4.7s. I think Travis may have run the 4.7s. I have to double check on that, but I know Hockenson did. And he plays in line, but they line him up in the slot all the time. And for 243, I wrote down he blocks like he's 260. Like he takes inline blocking very seriously, and then he just catches everything you throw to him. Huge catch radius. He has wide shoulders, so he looks bigger than 243 in person. And he grew up in South Florida. Obviously, his dad played with the Dolphins, and his dad was actually in Miami when Rick was in the front office there. And Rick described Oronde Gadsden Sr. as the best contested catch guy he'd seen. And that's a lot of what OG2 does. I was talking to Oronde at the Shrine Bowl, and I said, because he told me, I asked him, like, did you see growing up, your dad played, and did you see a lot of the Dolphins players? He said, my Little League coach was Zach Thomas, Dan Marino, Sam Madison, Pat Surtain Sr., and then he obviously played with all the sons. I said, I hope you guys were good. He said, yeah, man, we went undefeated. Come on now. So that's what he grew up around. And he's a good kid, talking to him. And I think his tape is such that people are sleeping on him. I'm not sure why.
It's funny because when you think about those Miami teams, man, like they had 2 of arguably the best QB helpers you could have. They had Oronde Gadsden and Chris Chambers.
Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, like those dudes caught everything. some amazing catches. And Gadsden, to me, is the ultimate cheat code, right? Because when we're looking at flex tight ends, we're looking at guys that were probably a little bit too slow coming out of high school as a receiver, go to college, grow into a tight end, and now they still have the receiver skills. But he was a receiver in college that turned to tight end. So it's already a disadvantage for a defender because he has the nuance of running routes. And that nuance is natural to him because he was a receiver right out of the gate. And so when you combine the size and you talk about the wide shoulders, and people need to understand when you're bringing up wide shoulders or narrow hips or, that type of stuff, you're talking about the ability to add weight. So he can still add weight to his frame. You know what I'm saying? He's not too narrow to where he's going to be able, that's what you see is what you're going to get. So there's still upside growth potential left in this game. And when you combine the fact that as a receiver, now you get creative in your formations in the red zone, you could put him out there and he technically can still be a receiver. Remember Boo Williams, who played at Arkansas, that he was a receiver at Arkansas, goes to the New Orleans Saints. They transitioned to him. He's kind of one of the first flex tight ends. And, now you have an ultimate mismatch. And so, yes, defenses is now caught up to where you're getting guys that are a little bit more apt in coverage, safety-wise, but Gadsden gives you that. And again, he's still learning the nuances of blocking and, certain things that you have to do as a tight end. So that's going to continue to grow. So that's why I was super high on him. He was my number 2 flex tight end.
By the way, the pro day, he was running wide receiver routes in addition to running some inline routes, and he looked like he'd been there his entire life. I'm not worried about him at the next level. His job isn't stacking cornerbacks on the outside. His job is getting open in the middle of the field and creating separation with his big catch radius, and that's that's all over the tape. All right, next up, number 6 on our consensus list. Let's see where you had my guy Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. Arroyo did not make. Oh, you had him at 10. Excuse me. I had him at 5. And man, I'm fine with that because there's so many insanely athletic dudes. He was 6'5", 250. He didn't run at the combine. His pro day is Monday as we record this on the 24th of March. We'll see if he decides to run there. If he doesn't, he or his agent can refer you to the tape where he is consistently one of the best athletes in the middle of the field. He played at around 245 during the season. It looks like I said he plays way more physical than that. Reliable, soft hands, big catch radius, catch ball away from his body. He can put his foot in the ground and win at the top of the route. And running through arm tackles, as you see here in this image, if you're watching on YouTube. And as much as I love Xavier Restrepo, and Cam Ward is the situation of rising tides lifts all boats. Restrepo benefited, Elijah benefited, Sam Brown benefited. They had the slight receiver. I don't know, Jacoby George, was that his name?
Jacoby George, yeah.
Yeah, he also benefited. But I think the takeaway for me is that Elijah Arroyo is the security blanket you want for whether it's a veteran tight end in college or your young tight end at the next level, because he is going to be where he's supposed to be. He is going to be open, and he's a yak dude once you get the ball in his hands.
And you've aptly described him, right? And the other part I'll just add to that, which makes him such a valuable asset to your passing game and to a quarterback, is that he reads coverages well on the fly. So he's able to adjust mid-route versus man and zone and work himself open. He's probably the best ISO player at the position in terms of like, hey, one-on-one, need a chance, need a route to go get it. He's going to win that route one-on-one consistently, which is evidence of what we all saw at the Senior Bowl. Most consistent tight end there all week. So he has all of those requisite traits. So what concerns me, the blocking has to improve at all levels. Inline, on the move, down. Like, bro, you got to just be consistent there. Like, so that's why he's in this flex category.
Yeah.
He's my number 4 flex tight end. I have a couple guys ahead of him, 3 obviously ahead of him. But in terms of just being a straight receiving threat that can read coverage on the fly, this is kind of how the Travis Kelce thing went, where he came in with these same type of knocks, but we saw him grow as a blocker. Consistent effort was there, and we already knew about the receiving skills, and he was able to pair both of those together. He became a superstar.
And the thing about Travis Kelce coming out, he may have had some off-field minor stuff, nothing big, but he was undersized, quotation mark, at the time. Now, I don't know if he weighed 235 or whatever, but 235 now you can work with as a flex tight end. I was reading my notes on Elijah Arroyo's block, and he can get out in front of the ball carrier and block in space, does it with purpose. He's a want-to blocker in space, less effective in line, which is what you just said.
I would say this, he also got to stay healthy, man. He's been missing a lot of games.
Yeah.
So that's the other part too.
And that's easiest for us old people to say, just stay healthy.
Right.
Meanwhile, you got hurt getting out of the rocking chair this morning. All right, Striker, let's take another break, and we'll hit 7 through 10 of these tight end rankings right after this.
Guys, can you feel it? Legends were born here. History was made here. These are hallowed grounds.
Hallowed grounds? The NCIS squad room?
Well, I wasn't talking about that, but I was talking about Augusta National.
All right. It's finally time for the Masters. I hear it's a tradition unlike any other.
All right. Down the home stretch here, Emory. And you know what, man? This guy that you have, he didn't make my top 10. He was 5 in your list. We watched him over the summer, and I liked his game a lot. And nothing changed, just that a bunch of other guys got pushed up as we went through the fall. But Jake Briningstool out of Clemson had a good season, went to the Senior Bowl, had a good week there. And 6'5", 241. And you're in a 4.75. That's fine. I don't have any issue with that. I'm looking through my notes here. I said my comp for him was Grant Calcaterra.
Okay, I like that.
Grant's a little longer. Jake looked longer on tape, but a 6'5", 241. That's the same. That's what we were just talking about a moment ago with Gunnar Helm, and they feel like completely different body types. But in terms of height and weight, that's what they came in at. I thought he got better as the season went on because Cade Klubnik got better as the season went on, and I don't think he's undersized in terms of what you would like him to do. I think he's a pretty good blocker, actually. And you talk about Arroyo, he's a better blocker than Arroyo. So I liked him. It's just a fact that there were some other guys that had seasons that got my attention, but I like Jake Briningstool, and I had him as an early day 3 guy as we sit here.
Yeah, he's my number 1 flex tight end. I just love the fluidity within his game. Like, he moves really well for guys his size, right? So it gives you the impression that he can get in and out of his breaks rather well, sink his hips, and run those routes that you need your big wide receivers to run. So let's say if you get into a situation where you kind of want a big guy over the middle, you got a hard slant call. That's the kind of guy you dial that up for him to go out there and execute. I'm glad you brought up the run blocking, because to me, in my notes, I have the run blocking effort is there, which is admirable, which is all you want. We talked about this with the running backs, right? The effort is there. Is that you clearly see he has to continue to get stronger, because stronger defensive linemen get to have their way with him and make it instead of him getting movement, is just getting stalemated or is getting reset. So that is a problem that he's going to have to work on. But in terms of the route running, winning at all 3 levels of the passing game, short, intermediate, and deep down the field, and got better every year at Clemson. I like his game, man.
Yeah, and in fact, the only tight end that probably doesn't need to get stronger is Hawes out of tight end, out of
Right.
excuse me. Like, that dude was born to block in line, and he's going to get drafted. He may get drafted before some of these guys we're talking about, and he very easily could have made this list. But he's the best blocking tight end in this class. As I look through my notes here about Briningstool, long strider, good hands, tough player who will take hits to make the play, has contested catch ability, can maintain contact balance for yards after catch. And to your point here, good athlete who is more move tight end / wide receiver, who would have a ton of success in systems like San Francisco or KC, for example. Undersized guys who you can move around: Jawan Jennings, Travis Kelce, Noah Grace, not really undersized, but Justin Watson type players who are sort of tweeners in terms of their height and weight. Yeah, I like Briningstool. And are you taking him day 2, or you think he lasts till day 3?
I think he'll be there day 3, because we anticipate running backs being heavy on day 2, right? And so that earlier in the draft, you probably gonna get all the O-line, D linemen. And so that'll push receivers and running backs on day 2. Then tight ends probably gonna have their field day on day 3.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We can all have sort of 75 to 150 grades on these guys, but there's only 75 picks that can go in that
Right,
range. So at some point, some of these guys got to get pushed down, fair or not. All right, next up, I'm sort of shocked that you didn't have my dude on here. He was my number 6 guy. He missed your top 10, Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green. And I hear Stryker didn't want to take a break to talk about Harold Fannin, what he did to Penn State, because he put a whooping on them and he put a whooping on Texas A&M the very next game. So any concerns about playing against Power 4 programs, he put those to rest early in the season. So explain to me, and he's the definition of a move tight end. Let me double check his weight. I think he came in at, he's 6'3", 238. So a little smaller. He didn't run at the combine. I don't know if Bowling Green's had their pro day yet. He has a weird running style.
Yes.
But he's not slow. So explain to me why he's outside your top 10, because he feels like he's a souped-up version of Malachi Corley to me, who, again, is a slot guy. He's not a move guy. He's a receiver that just drafted on day 2. What are you thinking about Harold Fannin Jr.?
Shout out to Connor Baselick, his quarterback, who had a really good Hula Bowl too. But so there are going to be some people at that pro day too. They got another tight end that's really good, inline guy, and they got a receiver that's pretty good too. So and a couple of corners. But
Did you get them all in there?
I'm all in there. Like, for him, it's weird, man. It's almost like how we tap dance around someone that can't really cook. And we saying, it's prepared nice, and it's
Man, what are you trying to say?
these ingredients. I like how you use this. I like how you pair it, but it don't taste good, right? But for Fannin, we're tiptoeing around the fact that he's not athletic. He looks stiff athletically, put it that way. And
I think here's the thing: if you just saw him play from the waist up, you would think he's what's his name? You would think who's the man who got drafted by the Cardinals in 2003. The play for the Ravens. I'm having an old person's moment here. He was a wide receiver.
Oh, Max Williams?
No.
No. Oh, that was another stiff one too.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll look it up.
Oh, because here's the thing, and because here's a practical example of you could be stiff athletically and still be okay. Because David Njoku is stiff athletically, right? There's no wiggle in his game. Isaiah Likely is stiff athletically. But they can.
I'm not. Look, man. Just so people know, I don't agree with that. But you go ahead.
Well,
I want to make sure I differentiate myself from you.
When I'm talking about stiff athletically, I'm talking about lateral agility.
Anquan Bolden. Like if you watch Harold Fannin from the waist up, he's Anquan Bolden. But you watch him from the waist down, and then you're like, wait a second, what's going on with the knees?
So the reason why, and I put this in my notes, right? This is a positive for him, and this is a reason why the perception can, in a way, be the reality. Because he understands spacing. So he's not going to run himself into coverage, which is why he's always open. So when you are easily identifying the coverage and you're making yourself available, you're getting the ball first and often. So it's not saying he's getting spam targets, but he's underneath. Your O-line really can't protect that much. Basically getting the ball out is going to Fannin. And why not? Because he's strong. He's an H-back. He's going to have good strength to be able to break tackles, which he does. But if we're talking about raw athleticism, we're talking about guys that are bendy, guys that are fluid. That's not him. And there are bunch of tight ends that are, in my eyes, more athletic than he is. So Chig Okonkwo could be another good comp for him as well.
Chig's a good athlete, though.
Yeah, but more straight line-ish in terms of athleticism.
But let me tell you this. And, this is what we talked about at the top of the show. We got to be careful about just saying, oh, we got Evan Ingram here. Let's put him out there and take him 20th overall.
Right.
Sometimes you need guys to get open. We're not asking him to outrun Pat Surtain the second down the field. We're asking him to beat the nickelback who weighs 185 or beat the linebacker who can't flip his hips. That I think he can do.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about when we brought up the, we was talking about case in point. We were talking about the running back from Iowa in the previous.
Caleb Johnson.
Right. So you got 4 downs to get 10 yards. Like, I just need you to catch the football, get up the field as much as you can. So I'm not expecting him to be Evan Ingram. I need you to be Harold Fannin. But if we're talking about this and when you're grading prospects, you're like, I can't ignore the lack of twitch,
Look, man, they spend millions of dollars to do all the testing, the physical testing, and then, we don't have access to the psychological testing, and that's not part of the conversation here. But physically, he doesn't necessarily match up with these guys. I will say the Senior Bowl, he didn't stick out for being slower, shorter, skinnier than those dudes. I thought he held his own with everyone else.
And we saw him put him at fullback too, right?
Yeah.
So that could be another pathway for him.
Yeah, he could be on the Chris Cooley, Emory Hunt, H-back.
Use check.
Use check path to success. By the way, Bowling Green's pro day is the same as Cam Ward Miami. It's on the 24th of March on Monday. All right. So, yeah, there you go. I mean, these are conversations that teams are having. I like him on day 2. I would imagine he probably goes on day 3. I think the comp for him is probably Isaiah Likely-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah Likely was a 4th-round pick, I believe. He's outplayed his draft slot, Isaiah Likely, but, hey, you guys got to go somewhere. All right,
That's
next
a good
up.
comp too, man, because I could see him. Think about what we now know of Likely. When the game on the line, that's the dude they go to because
Right.
he legit clutch now, So,
And as an example of taking advantage of opportunities once Mark Andrews got hurt, and I remember talking to Likely at the Combine, and I said, sort of like, what motivates you coming out of Coastal Carolina in terms of competing here this week and looking forward? And he said, this is how I view everything. I'm going up against guys who are trying to take food off my table. And I said, that's got, again, that depends on where you come from and your experiences and what motivates you. And that sounds like someone who probably didn't grow up at the country club. He probably had to fight for everything he had. And,
right.
Sometimes those motivators get you a lot farther than your 40 times. So just, something to keep in mind as you get through this thing. All right, next up, man, I'm pumped that you got this dude on here. That's how I know you did your homework. Because he was another guy that I watched coming out of the Senior Bowl. He was a late add to the Senior Bowl, I believe. And I said, I love me some Thomas Fidone II out of Nebraska. I did not watch him in the fall, I'll be honest with you, but I did watch him back in January. 6'5", 243, ran a 4.7. And my comp for him was coming out of UCLA was Greg Dulcich. Now, Greg Dulcich has not lived up to expectations in Denver, mostly because of injuries. Good athlete, long strider. He gets on the linebacker's toes in a hurry in the middle of the field, gets out of his break with urgency, big catch radius with good hands, only had 1 drop on 51 targets. He can make contested catches and take big hits and then get yak afterwards. And where's number 24? You got to love that. But it's just, I think it reinforces, Emory, how much the passing game has changed, sort of trickling up from high school to college and gets his way to the NFL, because all these tight ends are just insane athletes who can make plays all over the field. And Fidone, who as I mentioned, I did not watch one snap of his during the fall on purpose. I really enjoyed watching him during the pre-draft process.
And I'm not making this comp, Ryan, because he's wearing 24, but I could make this comp with you because you are of my generation where we have a deep football encyclopedia. We didn't just start watching football in 2006, like many of these cats have, right? So Ryan Wolfley, remember? He's now the color analyst for the Arizona Cardinals radio broadcast. With his
brother was a offensive lineman, Craig Wolfley, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he works for the Steelers. That's right.
Just passed away, by the way. Rest in peace to Craig Wolfley.
He did? I didn't know that.
He just passed away earlier in the week. Yeah.
Oh, man. Great guy. Great dude. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and his brother Ryan was like one of the first like fullback H-back types, right? So this who Fidone reminds me of. And remember, coming out of high school, he was, I think, the top tight end in his high school class.
In 21 recruiting class, both by rivals in 247.
So he's missed the first 2 years of his college career recovering from injuries. So you hope that is, out of the way and it's all good health moving forward, because I was like you watching this film, you're like, yo, this dude was pretty good, man. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's athletic. He's quick. He there's a sense of urgency about his game. He catches the ball well. He's good after the catch. He's physical in his blocking, and that shows up at all 3 levels of blocking. So if he can stay healthy, he's kind of like the guy that Eric All. When you watch this film, you like, he's awesome. But then you look at his injury history, it's like, that is not awesome. You know what I'm saying? So
he got hurt again for the Bengals, so he's out for a while.
Right. And so, and I think a lot of it for Fidone, the pad level, if it can come down a little bit, because when you're playing a little bit high, you're not as on balance and you tend to yield a little bit more injury risk because of it. So, but I mean, as far as a receiving threat after the catch, big time Fidone fan.
He had 51 targets last season, just 1 drop. 200-meter guy in high school and 81st percentile among all the high school kids that ran. High jump 6'3", that's 92nd percentile. So again, just the freakish athleticism of these kids. This is what happens when you don't grow up smoking cigarettes and eating Fruit Loops all day.
When we get to these other, I got a story about a sleeper and that thing. So we it ties to your point.
All right, so Harold Fannin and Thomas Fidone Jr. in the second, respectively, both tied for 8th on the consensus with the first pick tight end rankings. And number 10, this man stuck in. Like, I liked his tape, but then he went and ran a 4.8 and change. So Brian Nesbit out of North Carolina, 6'5", 238. So he's a little undersized. 4.88 is what he ran. So Emory, let me double check to make sure I don't tell any lies on you. You have Nesbit 7th on your list. He wasn't in my top 10. I have him as a mid to late day 3 guy, in part because he's undersized at 238, and then in part because he didn't run nearly as well as he probably needed to, if we're just being honest about it. Give me some reasons for optimism about Bryson Nesbit, because athleticism shines, but the long speed obviously is a concern.
Well, he plays faster than that. And that's how I view speed. You know, I don't care what these dudes run in Indy. How do you play? I better, like, the whole controversy with Matthew Golden, right? Like, bro, I better see 4.2 on film. You know what I'm saying? And he plays 4.4 on film, 4.5-ish, but doesn't
don't disrespect this to him. But no disrespect to Matthew Golden on this podcast, sir.
It's not disrespect. It's honest. Like, do you see 4.2? Like, when I see Rocket Ishmael, that's 4.19. I see it on tape. I see it when he's running, right?
My comp for Matthew Golden is Jordan Addison, who ran a 4.49, I think.
So, to your point, he plays about 4.49, and you know, so that's fine. Like, because you fast, that's blazing anyway. But Nesbit, I love the enthusiasm he plays with. You can tell he takes pride in his work, whether it's like running routes, blocking, after the catch. He enjoys being out there. And guys that have that type of personality when they play, it's infectious. And you see it permeate throughout the rest of the team, where everybody else wants to make plays because, man, this dude look like he's having fun out there. I want to be a part of the fun. And he does work himself open a lot. He has very good hands. He's catching the ball within, the confines of contact. So he's able to sustain that catch and hold on and keep it trucking, like BJ and the Bear. So when you think about, that's before your time, Striker.
Yeah, he doesn't know what that is.
So
here, hold on one second, Emory. Hey, Striker, do you know what BJ and the Bear is?
No, I'm gonna sit this one out.
The bear was a chimpanzee, and BJ drove a truck. I don't even know what the moral of the story was. What did they do?
All right, just on that, I'm back in.
What did they do each week?
They traveled around the country. Yeah, that big red truck.
Yeah.
We watched
the Bear. Man, we would watch anything in the 80s on those 2 channels we had.
But Nesbit, the issue I have with Nesbit is the inline blocking. Obviously, he got room to grow his game. He's almost too enthusiastic to a fault, to where you lose leverage, you lose your technique, and you get knocked off. And sometimes those missed blocks ends up, in a TFL. So, in terms of receiving, I like his receiving skills. I was surprised and disappointed, to your point, in the 4.8. Like, bro,
yeah,
you got to give us at least a 4.6, right? But he plays faster than that. You just hope that 4.8 won't knock his opportunity of getting drafted.
So right, and 4.88, and that's got to remember
that's
that extra
walking.
8. Again, the March 24th on Monday, that will be the North Carolina Pro Day. I would imagine he runs there again. And as I look through my notes, Emory, I agree with a lot of what he says. Plays some juice downfield, has natural hands, big catch radius. He does have some focus drops. And it felt like a lot of times he was this close to making a big play down the field, and it would just get through his hands. Mm-hmm. And those are the plays you got to make at the next level if you want to stick on a roster. But physically, he does play bigger than 238. It was just the little sort of details that separated him from the other guys who we had talked about ahead of him. But again, if he goes down there and runs by the way, Kyle Hamilton ran a 4.75, whatever the combine ran.
Remember that?
And then he ran again at Notre Dame. It was 4.6 or whatever it was, 4.5 maybe. And he got drafted later than he should have. If you can play, you can play. Nesbit is faster than 4.88, but those are going to be questions that folks are going to ask. If you run if you put it out there, people are going to have questions.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's our top 10. But I want to mention a few guys here, just outside the top 10, that Emory and I had on our separate list here. C.J. Dupree out of Alabama. That dude just makes plays, man. He just makes plays, and he's a good athlete. I think he ran 4.6 at the combine. My comp for him was Theo Johnson, ran a 4.69, 6'4", almost 6'5", 256, excuse me, and 31 targets. Did have 4 drops, so it needs to be a little bit more consistent there. He was a Maryland transfer, and like every other tight end in human history, he played quarterback in high school. But I was pleasantly surprised with the athleticism he showed, because a lot of times just sort of these inline Alabama tight ends are just that in a post O.J. Howard world. So I liked him so much, I would take him early day 3 if you're looking for sort of a guy who can block and inline and also give you something down the field. You had Ben Yurosek on your list. Man, I love Ben Yurosek. I have no idea why he transferred from Stanford to Georgia, where they threw the ball to him 3 times. Went to the Shrine Bowl. The kid's a great athlete. I think he ran really well at the combine.
Mm-hmm.
He ran a 4.64, 6'4", 242. Wait, he didn't get a combine invite, so he ran 4.64 at his pro day.
Right.
The Georgia Pro Day. So, yeah, he didn't get a combine invite, which was a sort of surprise, but he wasn't utilized, so I understand. Stanford, he put up some numbers. I'm fine leaving Stanford to go somewhere else, but I think he sort of hurt himself by going to Georgia because he went there and basically hid his talents from the rest of the country.
But what they showed at Georgia, which is why he's my number 3 H-back, fantastic blocker, like outstanding blocker. So that's going to get him on the field. And then they could realize the Stanford part of his game, the receiving skill set that oh, wow, I didn't know he was this good of a receiver. Yeah, he was. He just was blocking all day at Georgia. And back to CJ Dupree, he was my number 4 inline. And first note, good athlete, good blocker at the second level. So I agree with you there, too. He's a real good player, man.
And finally, Terrence Ferguson. Do you have Terrence on your list?
He's my number 9 flex receiver, but he wasn't in my top 10.
I had him at number 10 on my list there. You can see it there. And there's just so many good athletic tight ends, and he's another one. 6'5", 247, ran a 4.63 at the combine. 32-inch arms, almost 33-inch arms. And it's funny, man. He had 4 drop passes this season, but he had 63 targets. I'm not really concerned about that. And he eats up cushions in space. He will get up on defensive backs and linebackers in a hurry, and then he will run past them. And we saw some of that athleticism at Oregon last season. Willing blocker on the perimeter, needs to get better in line, which again is a recurring theme with a lot of these young men for the most part. But I had him early day 3. Again, I have a lot of these guys grouped together, and they could go. You're looking at the list here on YouTube, Emory and I's individual rankings. You could throw these names in a hat outside of the first 2, and they could go in any order, and I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. I think Loveland, Warren, and then after that, whatever's up for grabs here. I'll ask you this before we get out of here, though, Emory. Feet to the fire. Who's the first tight end drafted?
Warren.
I think
NFL is always predictable, man. They love football guys.
Yeah,
and Warren fits football guy.
And Colston Loveland, for as much as I love him, I do wonder if he falls into the category of insane athleticism, and then you put him in a situation that's not the best fit for his talents. Now, if you told me he had 800 receiving yards next year, I would believe that as well. But Tyler Warren, you could throw him in any system, anywhere in the country, any level. It feels like he's going to be one of the best players on the field just because to your point, he's an overall football player. All right, if you're watching here on With the First Pick, our consensus rankings, Colston, Tyler tied for first, Gunnar Helm at 3rd, Mason Taylor, number 4, Oronde Gadsden the 2nd out of Syracuse at number 5, Elijah Arroyo at 6, number 7, Jake Briningstool getting some love out of Clemson, Harold Fannin Jr. out of Bowling Green, tied for 8, Harold, send all your mail to Emory Hunt for calling you slow, Thomas Fidone the 2nd out of Nebraska, love it, and then Bryson Nesbit comes in at number 10. Hopefully Bryson goes crazy at his pro day on March 24th, runs out 4.6. What do you got, Emory?
Quickly about that athlete story, right? So I'm at the College Gridiron Showcase. It's in Fort Worth, and I'm watching this tight end just kind of look fluid and just smooth. Mitchell Van Voren of St. Norbert, right?
Wait a second, what college?
St. Norbert.
All right, hold on one second. Striker, where's St. Norbert College?
I'm going to say somewhere in the U.S.
All right, I'm gonna guess. It feels like a Wisconsin college.
You're absolutely right. Right, and there's a tie to that reason why. I think it's like right around Milwaukee. So I'm like, man, I don't want to overhype this dude because we're at an All-Star game and he was baking these FBS tight ends. So I can't wait to go dive into his film. So I dive into his film. I'm like, oh, no wonder he was a great athlete. He spent the first 4 years of his collegiate career at Marquette as a 4x100 meter hurdler.
Okay.
At 6'4", 250. And so he said, the last year of my college eligibility, I wanted to play football. The closest place that had a football team, because Marquette doesn't have football, was St. Norbert. So he goes there. They put him at outside receiver, 510 yards, 10 touchdowns in his only season of football. So no wonder he was out there baking dudes, running these routes, because he was a fantastic. Imagine, and I went back and watched the track highlights. Bro, the fact that this dude's 6'4", 260, you think he walk up there on the track, you're like, bro, the shot putting him over that way. Like, what you doing out here? This is the hurdles. He got out there and placed in one, and I was like 60. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, dog.
Out there playing wide receiver against future accountants and just turn them around. All right, well, good for him. He did well at the showcase.
He did really well at the showcase. He did really well at his pro day. I think he jumped 36 inches on a vertical, ran 4.7. But man, 6'4", 250. That I could take that all day, especially when you have Mitchell Van Boren.
Man, all right, Mitchell Van Boren. That's Emory's guy. You heard it here first. Yeah, tight end St. Norbert, 6'4", 243, 9-inch hands, 32-inch arms, 4.77, 16 on the bench, 7.55 3-cone, 34.5-inch vertical. You love to see it. All right, good job, Mitchell Van Boren. That's a good story. All right, Emory. I appreciate it. That's a wrap on episode 234. Remember, you can check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast. And by the way, me and Emory and Josh and everyone else and their brother, we're doing these individual 7-round team mock drafts. Those are all in the YouTube feed, and I think they're on the podcast feed as well, so you can check those out. And just a reminder, With the First Pick RV will be rolling down the street. Next week, we'll be at Ohio State on Wednesday, the 26th, and the 24th will be Miami to see Cam Ward. So be sure to check all that stuff out. In the meantime, thanks to all you guys who watch, listen, and comment, and have a good weekend.